Good afternoon. The other day I talked about my cabbage, my fermenting cabbage, or sauerkraut, and I just want to tell you a little bit more about the brine and how it works. When you bruise your cabbage or stomp on it or pound it or whatever, it opens it up where the liquid, the juice, can start coming out of the cabbage, and then the salt naturally also draws it out. Also, the salt is what helps keep it crisp. So actually, in the winter time, you don't need to use as much salt as you might in the summertime. Okay, then the other thing is you put it in there and you put in, and I think the rule of thumb is about 3 tablespoons for every 5 pounds of cabbage. So weigh your cabbage before you cut it all up. And I find, and I probably could have used less, I use around 2 tablespoons of salt and then whatever spice I want. And I really like, coriander, so I always put that in with it. But you can put other spices with it. And so then what I showed you in the other video, it wasn't this jar, but a gallon jar of water, and I presses it down to get more water out. And I don't add any brine at that time. It's just the cabbage, the spices, or whatever I want to put in there. I put in carrots, turnips, cabbage, beets, anything. The beets are with the cabbage. I've never done beets straight. Okay, anyway, that water that's so heavy presses it down and more liquid can come out of your cabbage. And what you want to see, it covered in 24 hours. If you don't see liquid in there above your cabbage, and it would be nice if it was about 1 inch above, it doesn't have to be, you don't need to measure it, just see that it's covered with brine, with liquid. And then you don't have to add anything more to it. But sometimes you get an old cabbage that's at the end of the season, maybe, and been kept a long time or stored a long time, and it's drier, and sometimes it just won't make that extra juice. And actually, I've only had that happen to me once. Then what you want to do, and it sounds like a lot, so I'm not sure, I don't think I added that much when I did it, but they say for a cup of water, a tablespoon of salt. And to that I would put less just because I don't like things too salty. But put that in. You have to have some salt water. So, and remember, a tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. So maybe just add a couple of teaspoons, or even try a teaspoon. And put that in, but then you're making a brine start. But also, when I make it, if I just happen to have brine from my last batch that I made, I'll put it in here, and it jump starts it and gets that probiotic going faster again into my crock pot. It's not a crock pot. Into my making of the sauerkraut. So that's that. And then I started talking about things I have been, and like I told you, at this age, I'm just a has-been. Well, to start with, also I said that my favorite place to live was always where I am now, but there was one place that wasn't my favorite. And it really couldn't help it. No matter if it had been any of those other places that I've lived in, it wouldn't have been my favorite, because that was the place where it really jarred my life. Before that time, I was pretty comfortable in life. I was complacent, but it jarred me out of that. And we moved to a different state, and we bought a cattle ranch. And so I became the wife to a cattle rancher, except he had a job. And so who irrigated? I did. Who ran the tractors a lot? I did. And you know what? I found out I really loved it. And yet it was so hard for me to adjust. Actually, I wasn't born too far from where I am right now. And I laugh and sort of kid. Here we have climate, but most of the rest of you have weather. And we moved to Idaho. It has weather. We moved there in May. It was a balmy spring day, and the kids and I settled down. Tom went back for a last load, and the last bit he was going to bring our cattle back. And it was so nice when he left, but the next day was the cold. I'd never lived in such cold weather, and here it was in May. And all of a sudden I discovered that the stove in the house was designed for coal, and we had wood. And I couldn't get any heat hardly out of it. So the weather, wow, and it wasn't predictable. I mean, it was the place, and you probably live in those places where you say if you don't like the weather, stick around a few minutes, and it'll be something different. And so the weather wasn't predictable. We came up to our first calf season, and it had been one of those really snowy springs that bring the scours with it. And so here was my first experience, and everyone was facing calves with scours. And I took a class on it afterwards. It was the first time I ever knew what mountain oysters were. The first time we had to castrate and brand and vaccinate, and the vet helped us, and he kept saving the testicles in this can of water for some friends. And I kept thinking, why? And then he explained to me, mountain oysters. Evidently he didn't eat them. I don't know if you've eaten any, but I haven't. But it was all new. And yet, oh, another place too, where we were before, and we had 10 acres, we had a cow, we had chickens. But anyway, we also had TV. But this place we couldn't have, and you know what? That was one of the best things that ever happened to us, I think. The next time we had TV, oh, we moved there. Our youngest son was not in school yet. When he was 16 and we lived someplace else, somebody felt sorry for us and gave us a TV. And he came to us afterwards and said, Mom, I'm so glad we didn't have TV all these years, because they had done so many fun stuff and other stuff that they probably wouldn't have. Anyway, and we still don't have TV here. But, oh, and another thing, if you don't do it, you farmsteaders, homesteaders, or journal. Write down. Now, I wouldn't say I was a journalist or journaled my journey, but every month I jotted down things and I wrote. It was a letter. I wrote a letter. And so I have some things that I've written at that time, and probably even though that wasn't my favorite place to live, I've written more about it. I have a lot of nice memories. Oh, I love to drive the tractors. And these are not your modern air-conditioned, big, huge tractors. They're the old John Deeres, all those antiques, the John Deeres, the Kays, the Fergusons, International. I think we had a John Deere in the International. I love the John Deere. That was my tractor. And anyway, I wrote a couple of things, and I just want to read them, and then I just want to applaud all you wives out there that are doing this and really having to work out there and do it. So I really admire you, and I want to encourage you, and I think you're really great to do it. Okay, the seagulls circled in the darkening sky while the nighthawks cried out mournfully, prophesying the impending summer storm. We worked together to get our hay in before the rain came. I drove the tractor, Tom bucked the bales, and our 4 children sort of helped as they rode the wagon to and from the barn. The weather made the mountains on each end of our ranch valley loom larger and bluer and close enough to touch. Lightning flashes reminded us to hurry, scurry, and the scene stays illuminated in my memory of sweat and labor, of tractor sound, thunder, and the birds and the family united in preparation of the storm. As the last load was on its way to the barn, the first fat raindrops fell, bringing a cooled breeze, the smell of wet dust and rain. And that's that little picture. And then I want to read one more. I woke up to the crunch, and I drifted off to sleep to the crunch of 1,000 grasshoppers. They covered our buildings and our fence posts and clung to our car. When we walked through our fields, we no longer sang or talked or scolded. We kept our mouths shut in fear of swallowing grasshoppers. From a distance, it looked like we still had green alfalfa fields, but it was only green grasshoppers clinging to naked stalks. Day after day, the grasshopper marched over the land, devouring field after field. The authorities argued day after day how to conquer the grasshoppers, and night after night the ranchers sat together going over the same arguments. And I'm just going to end at that time. And so there's all sorts of things that I know you face out there, but hang in there. And I only wish I knew now, knew then what I know now. I could have done it so much better. And I think I might be a slow learner, but I'm not. Yes, I am. Anyway, that was one of the things I have been. I've been there. I've done that.